Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Media Watch. I'm your host, Dr. Sari, and every week we try and look at the news around the world, and we share those stories, including world news as well as Sikh news in particular. And every week we also try and get you some fantastic guests, and this week I've got a brilliant guest. His name's Angad Singh. I won't steal his thunder just yet, and I'll introduce you to him and we'll talk about some of the things he's doing. We're going to have a slightly different emphasis to the show this week. We're going to talk more about World War I and also some stories related around sacrifices of soldiers. Now, let's first of all start off with the sad news that we heard. We start off with the fact that there's been a plane crash in the Alps on Wednesday. German, French, English and Spanish people have died there. The leaders have arrived together where the German wings plane crashed on Tuesday, killing all 150 on board. Our sincere sympathies go out to all the families and friends affected. I know there's some stories that are also circulating about the possibility that it could have been an issue with the co-pilot, but we'll see what comes out when they examine the black box. Now, without further ado, let's move forward with the programme. As I said, I've got a special guest with me this week. This is Angad Singh. Thank you for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Now, you are going to be doing, on the 12th of April, in Brighton, and we've got some photos here as well, the full Brighton Marathon,
yeah, that's correct.
In the full World War I regalia.
Dressed as a British Indian officer from the 15th Sikhs.
So the question to ask is, why are you doing that?
Why are we doing that? I think that's a good question. I volunteered over the summer with UK Punjabi Heritage Association.
That's a UKPHA, right.
And they ran a massive exhibition in the Brunei Gallery in SOAS called Empire, Faith and War. And
so for the viewers who don't know, SOAS is the School of Oriental and Asian Studies, which is part of the University of London, in London.
In Russell Square, London, yeah. So they have a gallery there, and there was an exhibition that went for 3 months talking about the Sikh and Indian contribution to World War I. So I was a volunteer there, and I've been inspired, quite frankly, from what happened there and the team, and I want to give back and also raise awareness.
Now, this particular organisation, I know they do a lot of work. They've got some fantastic books as well that they produced.
Yep.
They did the Golden Temple exhibition as well, didn't they? Now, my research said there was something like 20,000 people that came to that. Do you know how many people came to the exhibition last year?
It was around 30,000, and I think it's the third highest footfall they've had in that gallery.
Wow, amazing.
Yes, I think the highest was when the people who sponsored the gallery opened it. But it's come third, so it's quite impressive.
No, it's incredible, yeah. And so, do you know you were volunteering there? Do you know the kind of questions that people were asking? Were they really fascinated when they turned up?
It was actually, people were interested. I don't think, I myself didn't realise either, the scale of the contribution. You had something like 1.5 million Indian soldiers that went and fought in World War I. I myself have been brought up and born in London, so the only kind of stuff that I know from World War I is what I learnt in school, and that just covered a bit about what happened in the Western Front and a few war poems. So
did they talk about soldiers from India, or did they just seem to miss that out?
Not in my school, they didn't talk about that, and I believe for a lot of people it's the same story, but what I was surprised to find out, the war didn't happen just in France, it happened in Gallipoli and other places, and that people from all over the world came and fought, and it wasn't just in the trenches in the north of France. Just
before we show your video, I was just going to share some statistics with the audience. Notice that according to the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, now you were saying the figure's higher, they were saying, I think you said it was a different figure, that 1.1 million soldiers from undivided India, which included India, Pakistan, Bangladesh and Burma, right? So we're talking about undivided India, we're talking about, this is when India and Pakistan were together, right? Because obviously it's pre-partition. They went to fight between 1914 and 1915 in France, Belgium, Egypt and the Middle East, right? Yes. So your particular relatives went, didn't they?
Well, I was actually volunteering as a citizen historian, so we've been trained up by UK Punjabi Heritage Association to go and use resources that are freely available to us in London. So Imperial War Museum has a whole host of resources, but also somewhere called the National Archives. So there they've got all military records from World War I and before, and it was there that I could look up to see if anyone from my bin had fought and died in World War I. Now, funnily enough, my daya, my family, and my granddad's brother, they went to Hardwar and got the family history. So it goes back about 7 generations, so I was fairly confident that none of my family was involved in World War I. But when I typed in my bin, I found out people had fought and actually died in Gallipoli, which is now, I think, Egypt or Turkey. So it was quite a shock to me, and it also kind of inspired me to look deeper. So I've been to the National Archives and I've gone to find out about the regiment and try and find the war diaries to see what happened that day when the person from my bin fought and died in Gallipoli.
Did they send letters and things back?
Possibly, but I don't know. To be honest, I want to go back to the National Archives and look further, because it's a free resource available. It's an incredible resource. These things are nearly 100 years old and they've been preserved fantastically, and it's free and open to the public. So one of the great things about the project is helping the public understand, particularly the Sikh community, what's out there available for free.
Okay, well, let's stop for a second and let's just play the video of you actually introducing why you're doing it, and you're doing a bit of running in the gear as well. I was actually surprised. I wanted you to come today in the uniform, but you said they were in the tailors, right?
Yeah, you can come see me in Brighton as well.
Yeah, I'll be coming back from holiday that day. So let's roll that tape and just see Angad in action as well.
My name's Angad Singh. I'm 27. I'm from Finchley, and I run a social enterprise. And I volunteered for Punjabi Heritage Association Empire Faith War over the summer. I want to contribute to UKPHA, so I decided I like to do what I do best, which is to run, but with a twist. I'm going to be running the Brigton Marathon in April, dressed as a World War I Sikh, to raise funds for UKPHA so they can carry on and continue their inspiring work. I chose Brighton because during the exhibition I was inspired by the scale of the contribution of foreign soldiers in the British Army during World War I. I was astonished that many people were unaware of their involvement, so I want to commemorate the forgotten soldiers. Brighton Pavilion was used as a hospital for Indian soldiers, and those that died were cremated nearby at the Jati Memorial. So out of all the places across the UK I can do a marathon, Brighton is the most fitting. I have one final message: get involved, show your support, and click the link below the page and pledge your money for UKPHA and my run. With your help, they will be remembered.
Okay, well, hopefully the audience have been inspired by the reasons for you doing it, and the fact that you're going to wear the uniform. You're going to wear the belt, is that right, across the front and then the side, and then are you going to carry the rifle with you, or
no?
Because it looks pretty good when you're running with it. You know?
It does. It's quite heavy. I don't think it's appropriate to run the whole marathon with it. But I'm going to be wearing everything else.
Okay.
And carrying
so you're going to knee straps and.
Well, I'm going to wear the patia, and I'm going to be wearing the uniform as well.
Okay. Remind the audience of the Just Giving site that you've got if you'd like to contribute to this awesome sponsorship.
Yeah. So please, can you log on to www.justgiving.com/Angad World War I. It'd be a great way to support the project, great way to support myself, and to show the rest of the UK community here that Sikhs are behind this, they support this, and also that they understand that the relationship between Sikhs and the British is not something recent, but goes back, well, the British Army at least, goes back more than 100 years.
Because I always think that, you know, because we don't get to hear, when I went to school, I never got to hear any of it, right? Yeah. But I wonder if that could kind of promote better harmony between different people from different backgrounds.
Well, that's the thing. One of the outcomes of the project of Empire Faith War is to create education packs which are in line with the national curriculum. So if we get enough sponsorship and we can move forward with this, we're able to create these packs that will be put into national curriculum, so we can work with schools that children can be educated to know about the impact of Indian soldiers in World War I.
That's really good. Now, interestingly, there has been a book that literally just came out. You know, we check what's going on in the media anyway, and we note that there is a book, and you know this person as well. So, this particular book is by Mr. Das. I think his whole name is Sandhu Das. He is a teacher of English at King's College London.
Dr. Santanu Das, yep.
And we've got some pictures as well of 72,815 animals, including horses, mules and ponies and camels and bullock and dairy cattle. And these included 8,970 ponies, and they sometimes obtained them from abroad, but they actually had them trained in India. Yep. So it was like a big military operation going on in India to train them up and then bring those trained ponies over as well.
The contribution to World War I was massive from India, absolutely huge. It wasn't just that, you also had wheat, you had rice, you had jutes for sandbags, and you also had a lot of Indians buying war bonds, which nearly bankrupted the country. So India gave pretty much everything it could to help with World War I. But Dr. Santanu Das is a good friend of ours at Punjabi Heritage Association. He came to the talk at one of the symposiums, and we're really happy that he's doing this to kind of raise the status. And
so back in 1945, 14. What do you think the reaction? Because you're doing this in Brighton. There's a reason why you're doing it in Brighton, isn't
Yes,
it?
yeah.
It's because they've got the pavilion there. Was
Pavilion,
that used as a hospital?
Military hospital
Yeah.
for Indian soldiers. So that's where they all came when they were injured from the front. And he also had a lot of soldiers actually died in Brighton from from the injuries. So there's just outside Brighton, there's an area called the Jatari Memorial, where soldiers were cremated.
Right. There's a citadel there as well. That's the memorial.
That's it, yeah. And there's you can probably see in the video that I'm sitting on the steps
Right.
at the beginning.
I think we've got a picture of it as well. haven't we?
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So that was there created for Indian soldiers. And every year they have Memorial Day to commemorate their contribution and sacrifice. But Brighton was the military hospital at one point there. It was full of Indians.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know, it's interesting, I had a guest on ages ago, and it was an observation that they had made about the fact that when it comes to Poppy Day, right, do you think that enough of the community come out to say, look, we were there too? I mean, it's only in recent years that we've been talking about the contribution from the so-called Commonwealth in terms of different countries.
Yeah.
At one point, they weren't really featured, were they?
I think a lot of that is probably a lack of public awareness. I don't think the RC community aren't aware of what the contribution or the scale of the contribution was. I myself didn't know, and I thought I was fairly well versed prior to going to the exhibition. I realised how ignorant I was. So I think the whole point of why I'm running the marathon is not just to raise funds, but also raise awareness. The uniform I'm wearing is a replica of an actual uniform that existed of British Indian Army soldiers who were Sikhs and fought and died in World War One. And the actual relationship between Sikhs and the British military goes back more than 100 years. So I think if this was in the public consciousness and people were aware of it, they would go out and support it, because they can connect with that and know that somewhere previously or their forefathers or ancestors did fight in World War One.
Absolutely. So tell us, how do you think the people felt when they first saw these soldiers coming over in 1914? I know the Sikhs had come over before that as well, but they came over en masse, didn't they? I mean, do you think the local population would have been fascinated by...
There was a mixed reaction. From what I can remember in the exhibition, something slipped my mind now, there was a mixed reaction. You had articles in French papers.
Yeah, I think there were articles in the local, in the national press as well in the UK, wasn't there?
And generally they were received like heroes,
yeah.
Because they're coming to fight against the Germans and help France and help the Allies in their war effort. There was a little bit of controversy in Brighton, where the higher powers weren't keen on white female nurses treating Indian soldiers, so they made some changes where white female nurses weren't so hands-on, but directing other Indians, volunteers or servants to do the actual treatments. So there was there was mixed reactions in that respect. And quite interestingly, there was a discussion between all the warring sides prior to this about involvement of colonial forces. The Germans had said that they didn't want to use colonial forces and try to enforce that with the other sides, because they didn't want their colonial subjects to see their colonial masters at their weakest. So there was quite some interesting themes.
Psychology there.
Yeah, if they're helping them fight against, or they're seeing them lose, then it might put into their mindset that they can fight against their own colonial masters and for their own independence, which is obviously against the interest of any empire.
Right.
Yep.
Well, so it's quite interesting. Let me ask you another question. Do you think that there must have been some kind of motivation there? I mean, obviously there was. I think we were talking just before the programme about, is it King George was wearing a bug turban and he was saying, come and help us out. Yeah. When they were in the villages or living in the cities, the Sikhs, and there were people from other communities as well, like Hindus and I think some Muslims as well, they had come over as well. But the biggest contingent that came over were, I believe, Sikhs, is that right?
Well, 20% of that figure were Sikhs.
Okay.
Sikhs only made up.
What do you think they were thinking at the time?
So I know what I learnt in the exhibition, and from what I can recall, it's a mixture of reasons. For some, it was money, to be paid, something to do. For others, it was seen as a noble act to go and fight in these wars. Others, it was learning about deaths of brothers or family or neighbours that they went, so they made sure their death wasn't in vain. So I think it's quite a complex answer to that. It wasn't just one reason in particular, and there's a lot of propaganda going on. The British were heavily trying to recruit people in different ways. They're doing recruitment fairs, they're doing call-outs. So there's lots of different ways people were pulled in, and I wouldn't say there's one overriding reason or one thing that did that.
You say that they wouldn't have won World War I without the help of all the other nations.
From what I learnt in the exhibition, I personally believe so, because the number of soldiers that we're talking about is significant. It's
an incredible number.
It's absolutely huge. So I don't think on just the number of English soldiers alone would have been enough, given the amount that fought from different countries.
Now, there is another news item that's military related that came up this week, actually, and this is about the Iwo Jima military base. It's only open to outsiders for one day of each year, and only then to US veterans and their families. And I think some of the people that went there, I think there were 26 in all. I think the youngest were probably in their 80s. There's some of them in their 90s as well. And for most of them, it was the first time they'd seen that place since 1945. So now we are talking about, obviously, the next war after that.
Yeah.
The point I wanted to make was, I mean, in that particular battle, it took 4 days for the Marines to fight their way to the top, where they planted this like US flag. And I don't know if you've seen it. We've got a picture of it here, but I think it's actually a statue as well, where all these American soldiers are holding up this flag, and they're all just like supporting it.
Yeah, I've seen that picture.
It's a very famous, and it's probably described as one of the most iconic and most famous war photographs ever taken. Do you think, with all the Sikh battles, and it's interesting that Sikhs, we tend to fight battles for other people.
Yep.
We tend to defend the defenceless, don't we? Do you think that we have enough material in terms of images, museums, historical items available to us to kind of talk about these wins, these battles, these kind of sacrifices that we went through? Do you think there's enough of that?
Personally, I believe so. With what you just spoke about now, the example you've given is a very iconic photograph, but more about that, so is the story behind it, which has kind of captured our imagination, which is probably why you brought it up, want to talk about today. And there are so many stories that exist, but they just haven't been pulled out of history. So you've got the battles.
Where do we store these things? Do we create a museum, or how would we do that?
I think it personally, through my experience, the exhibition's up to the community. You've got organisations like UK Punjabi Heritage Association. You've got other charities out there doing this work. But I believe the onus is on us to pull out the history and present it on a world stage, on a global level, but have books that are of such high standard that universities want to use it in their history courses. But like I said, it exists in the National Archives. They have all the British Indian Army records. So you've got stuff about the Battle of Saragiri.
I know if you go to Imperial War Museum, you can get information.
Yep, Imperial War Museum as well. It's all there. It's all stored there, as museums do. But it's up to us to kind of pick out the stories and present it. So I think that as part of the motivation why I'm running Brigton Marathon is to capture people's imagination, is to wear the uniform and show this is what people used to wear, and they fought in World War One. I'm going to run 26 miles to do that, to commemorate their sacrifice.
So talk about the run is a great effort to do. It's really hard work. I did London Marathon many years ago, and I have to tell you, it's really hard work. I know you're up to 19 or something miles at the moment.
20 at the moment.
You need to do the 26 to get it get over that, and it's literally only a couple of weeks away. No pressure.
Yeah.
What they're going to do with the money? What's the UKPHA going to do with it?
So there's a number of initiatives that all need funding. We have a number of people who've left their full-time jobs to work and present the history. We're looking to put it into education packs, and these will go out to schools and be in line with the national curriculum.
Is anybody else going to help fund it as well? Is there going to be any contribution from, say, any other charities or fundraising?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not too sure on that.
I mean, like there's the UK Heritage Fund, right?
I don't know too much, I'm honest with you,
Okay.
but I know that the Empire Faith War project was a bid put into the Heritage Lottery funding.
The Heritage Lottery funding,
yeah,
okay, right.
Which they won nearly £500,000, but part of that was to raise £50,000 in match funding. So this also goes towards that match funding to show that there is an appetite from the community for this, which is why they can raise the money, which is what works out in £1 in £9.
Okay, that's really amazing, isn't
Yeah.
it? So, we talk about, do you think that they've got other projects in the pipeline? Are there other things that they're going to do after this? I mean,
Sikh history is so rich, Zoe. There's so much out there that we don't know about, but it's just a question of managing resources. Which stories are we going to pull out? Which ones can we present? Which ones are an appetite for the public? And what can we do with it? Because there's so much out there. Sikh history goes back, relatively a short amount of time, but there's so many stories there that will enlighten the community and kind of get their imaginations going.
Do you think it's up to the youth as well to maybe ask their parents, and the parents might know about their parents, and come forward and say, actually, here's a story that hasn't been documented before?
Yes, I think so, and it's part of one of the project outcomes is that a database is being created where people can present their stories.
As a video or...
Yeah, as a video. So some of us will be going out, some of us volunteers will be going out to record people's stories. During the exhibition, people could sign up to write about their stories. So I remember talking to one guy in particular. He was a British fellow, and his grandfather was an officer of a Sikh regiment, and he goes that he absolutely loved it. And he goes, the saddest day in his grandfather's life was when he had to retire. He goes, he absolutely loved his Sikhs. And he didn't want to retire.
I hear a lot about that, actually. When, if you talk to people who do remember that far back or remember their grandparents, and they'll say, actually, they remember their grandparents talking about, and I'm talking about people that, white people in the UK, and they'll go, oh, they were either born in India or their kids were born in India. But there seems to be this kind of disconnection, doesn't there? Suddenly, we don't seem to want to talk about that anymore,
I think part of the reason behind that is because after partition, you had the birth of a new country, the birth of India. And India didn't really want to remember its British colonial masters. Yeah,
but I mean, in the other way around, that white people don't necessarily want to come forward with their stories because, they might have stuff in their lofts.
That's true.
They might have suitcases with their, or hidden artefacts that we could never, get sight of.
Well, some of them actually brought them along to the exhibition, so they brought medals along with them. They brought old photos of their grandfather with the regiment. But again, I believe that there isn't a platform for them to come out and do that, which is why I'm quite passionate about the work that UKPHA is doing, because it facilitates that and allows these people to come forward.
I think it's interesting, coming back to what the knowledge that we had from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. Indian soldiers earned more than 9,200 gallantry awards for their bravery, and about 60,000 Indian soldiers were actually killed. I mean, there's that as well, isn't there? The fact that they came over to the UK, they came to Europe, they came to all these different countries to fight, and that some of them never went home.
That's the thing.
And how were their families supported?
I mean, I'm running a memory of one guy called Angad Singh, and he actually sustained injuries, fatal injuries, from rescuing his officer during World War I. So he came to Brighton, he was treated there, but unfortunately he didn't make it. So he was cremated in Brighton. So you had Sikh soldiers who were fiercely loyal to their white British officers. You also had stories of, I don't know if you heard of Lieutenant Jackie Smythe, who went on almost like a suicide mission. He had to cross, I think it was about a football pitch in terms over the trenches, which in those days meant instant death. And he went with his soldiers. Most of them died, his Sikhs, but they made sure that he survived. And in the end, he was awarded a Victoria Cross. But he said that I don't deserve this. It's not me. It's my Sikhs that did this. But unfortunately, I think it was only after the war an Indian soldier could be awarded a Victoria Cross. Before that, the highest was an Indian Order of Merit.
Right. Yeah.
So
interesting. There's obviously reason for that, and it's good to find out about that.
Yeah.
So sadly, that's all we got time for this time around. Before we go, there's a text messaging way that can go directly into your sponsorship page, isn't it? How do the viewers do that if they want to sponsor you?
If you can kindly sponsor me, you can text SIKH87, so SIKH 87, and then the amount, so put a £, the amount you want to text.
I think there's a value, isn't it? £1 to £10, isn't it?
I think you can do more than that.
You can do more than
that?
I
think
okay,
so. Well, I hope so. But £10 is good. I'm happy with that as well. And if you send that to 70070.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so we'll put some of that information up so that you can see it. We'll put the Just Giving page up as well. We'll try and end the show if we've got a bit of time just to show the video again. My personal thanks for I'm going to come all this way here.
No, thank you for having me.
I was expecting you in your uniform, but maybe
Brighton
next time.
On April 12th.
April 12th, I'll be there, and maybe I'll take some photos, or you can send us some pictures that we'll share with the audience next time.
Or if the channel can come down, your program can come down, that'd be excellent.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome, wouldn't it? To just cover that, maybe just finishing line as you're running through nice and fresh.
The victory sprint.
I wish you a safe run, and I hope everything works out well, and you enjoy it, and you raise lots of money, and really appreciate you coming on the show. So until next time, thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.